Cosmere can be a confusing place.
From allomancy to surge binding, there's a lot to look out for.
We're your hosts and escorts to the realms. I'm Griff.
And I'm Alex.
And this is the Silverlight Guide to the Cosmere.
Welcome back, bookworms.
Indeed, indeed.
Today, we're going to talk about Secret Project 4.
Which I believe we are going to continue calling it that until we get to the spoiler section.
That's correct, because some of you listening to this may not want to be spoiled on that, understandably, and then you're just going to listen to our little Is It Worth It review.
Right.
Okay, so Griff.
Yes.
Is Secret Project 4 worth it?
Absolutely. I actually think this probably, if I were to rank it on best to worst.
Okay.
Wizard's Guide.
Yeah. Frugal Wizard's
Guide would probably be at the bottom.
Yeah.
I liked it. I mean, yeah, we're just judging Sanderson works. Like all
Sure.
of them are good,
Sure.
but of the four,
Right.
Frugal Wizard's Guide is at the bottom.
Okay.
I think Yumi and the Nightmare Painter would be third.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure whether I would rank this or Tress as first place.
That's fair.
I liked Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. There was a weird thing with the pacing where it didn't quite sit right with me, and I can't put my finger on why.
I probably could, but that's probably a episode for another time.
Fair.
I think Secret Project 4 gets 9 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I'd put it there.
If you have read the Stormlight Archive, read this book.
If you have not read Stormlight Archive, probably read that before you read this book.
Absolutely. Darwin, you are licking a flip-flop.
He's just trying to live his best life.
And then he yawned. Of course.
But yes, no, if you have not read Stormlight Archive yet, read that before you read this book. It's pertinent.
And ultimately, probably read all of the rest of the Cosmere before you read this book. There's only the Sixth of the Dusk that I think is not in some way mentioned. Not the rest of the Cosmere.
No.
The rest of everything that wasn't Secret Project.
Well, okay, so that'd be getting into the spoiler section. So we'll have to discuss all the references in the spoiler section.
Yes, but there are a lot of references to everything except Tress and Yumi.
Is Elantris mentioned?
And
yeah, there is. Yeah, it is. The jar.
Yes, yep, that's right. So
yeah, so
the door is ajar.
So I think Warbreaker is actually the only one not mentioned.
Bro. Literally anything awakened. I'm pretty sure
okay,
they were mentioned
you're
specifically.
Right. No. The acronym at the beginning.
Yeah, we'll talk about this in the spoiler.
Yeah, no.
Pretty much
the acronym at the beginning is Warbreaker referenced.
Yes.
So yeah, no, you're right. Pretty much everything in the Cosmere is referenced in this book. So leave this for the end.
Leave it for the end. Sanderson wrote it to his fans.
Right.
Or dedicated it to his fans.
Yes, and he included references that fans would understand and recognize.
Yeah, the boxing gloves are off.
Yeah, exactly.
It is more connected than the Lost Metal was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And definitely than Tress was, and definitely than Yumi was.
Yep. Although, interestingly enough, I think it's earlier than all of those, timeline-wise.
Oh, probably. But we'll get into that in the spoiler section.
Yeah, I'm not really spoiling. I mean, like, that's my own personal list and where I place it chronologically.
Sure. So, probably read it.
Yeah. No, I mean, let me say this: if you have the requisite background, even if you don't, honestly, like you might be confused in some ways, but I still think the story holds up.
It does. If you're able to just go, okay, that was a phrase I don't really understand, but context clues, this is probably what it means. I can move on from this.
Right.
You're probably fine.
Which I can do because I actually at one point read, this is unrelated to the Cosmere, but I actually read the third book in a trilogy without realizing it was a trilogy until the end.
Wow.
So it introduced some really weird shit, and I was just kind of like, all right, this is just the setting as it's presented. Let's keep going.
Wow.
It actually held up. Like I'm sure there were things I was missing, but for the most part, it didn't seem to need the first two books to make sense in its own way. So
that's good.
Yeah.
That's a thing. That works. That works. Okay, so we'll go into spoilers now. So you have been warned. Spoilers.
So
The title of the book is Sunlit Man, and
Yes.
if you made it past that spoiler section, the spoiler warnings, and you didn't click off in time, hopefully you're not listening to this on Saturday and you're like, only 2 more days until I know the title, and I'm sorry that you didn't click off your phone.
I mean,
in time.
you gave him ample time.
I did.
To be perfectly honest.
I gave him ample time, and I clicked a lot of buttons accidentally.
Yes, you did. That record screech was not.
Nope.
That record scratch was not supposed to be in there.
No.
However, yes, the title of the book was Sunlit Man.
The Sunlit Man.
The Sunlit Man, yes.
Which is a fine title.
So I have a question for you.
Yes.
They state that the world does not have a perpendicularity.
Right.
However, do you think it was touched by invention?
I could definitely see that.
If invention is, in fact, has invention been confirmed as a shard?
Pretty sure.
Yeah, okay. So
Yeah.
I could see it having been touched by, based on the way the world works.
Right.
And the fact that they have technology. I'm like, yes, Sigzil does state the fact that worlds can develop in weird ways.
We have gone from like 5% spoiler to literally 100% spoiler.
No. 90% spoiler.
All right. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Anyways. Right.
But like he does state the fact that like worlds can develop in interesting ways. Like there was that one planet where they had fantastic architecture but hadn't invented the wheel and stuff like that. Which I understand his statement about not having the wheel with the jungle and it not being useful, but like I still think they would have had developed like wheels in other contexts.
They could have developed gears first.
Gears, water wheels, like I still feel like there are
Just let it happen.
Yeah, I know. But anyway,
There are bigger fish to fry, like
This is
all
fair.
of Canticle.
yes. Only 200 miles wide
In diameter.
in diameter. Yeah, that was way smaller than even I was picturing.
It's very tiny.
Because like, okay, here's the thing. I know he talks about the fact that like the gravity is so much more, and so like that's why he felt it was a regular sized planet.
Right.
But you would notice by the distance of the horizon
Yes.
that it was way smaller than Earth.
Yes.
Like that's smaller than the moon.
Right.
So like, I'm sorry, but no, his thinking that it's the same size as like Earth or anything is, I can't buy that.
I mean,
No, there's a lot I can buy, but I will notice if something that I am on has a smaller diameter than the moon. Because I've seen pictures of the moon and the horizon is noticeably smaller than Earth.
yeah. You have picked a really fine point to argue.
Yes.
We have bigger fish to fry.
I'm sorry, but this is one that's stuck in my craw, okay?
Okay, so our story begins with Nomad
Yes.
showing up on a planet.
Yes.
He has skipped there. Capital S skipped.
Yes, which is a term that I believe he has probably invented himself.
And or workshopped with Hoyd.
Or yeah, potentially, because it's clearly not the same kind of travel as
Perpendicularity?
well, I was going to say cognitive realm travel.
Right.
It's clearly something different than that.
Yep.
So it's noticeably different. I still wonder where he came from.
Good question. We probably will never know.
No, probably not, but it'd be interesting to find out.
Yeah. But I mean, skipping is essentially teleportation.
Yes, it is. It's much more so than pretty much anything apart from potentially the gates on Roshar
Right.
for Urithiru
Right.
and the various cities it's connected to.
Yeah. But it takes a shit ton of breaths to skip.
Yeah, well, BEUs.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be breaths.
It does not have to be breaths.
It takes a shit ton of investiture.
Yes.
Because if 1,000 breaths makes an awakened weapon like Nightblood, and like, what was it? 1 to 200 breaths is like 5% skip capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, that's a shit ton of investiture to be able to skip.
Yep.
Which makes sense considering that, as far as we know, the knights are probably the most invested beings that we've encountered in the mainline series so far.
Mainline series.
That are not like invested creatures themselves.
Does Elantrians fall into invested creature?
Yes, I would say so.
Oh, okay.
Because they can't, like, they don't invoke that state. They just are.
Sure.
And they're changed by the, what's the term?
Sheod.
The Sheod. And even then, I'd argue that, that'd be a hard one to argue. But anyway, like, the Rosharan gates probably take a shit ton of investiture, and they're not making the jump nearly as much as the skip is.
Right.
So it does make sense that it requires that much investiture.
Right. So Nomad on like the second page says storms. So we know he's from Roshar.
Yes.
Now Griff has already given away the shop.
Yeah.
But
I didn't bury the lead.
Yeah. Pretty quickly, and so I went back through the first few chapters, speed reading it the other day, and highlighting where we see different investitures mentioned, different things from different worlds mentioned.
Right.
And pretty quickly, Sanderson throws at you pretty much everything, with the exception of the Night Brigade.
Yes.
But even then, he's bringing in Threnody really fast.
Yeah.
Because the people on Canticle are
Cousins. Of Threnodians. Threnodites.
So they split off a long time ago. Their lodestar brought them to Canticle. They've been there ever since. And now I had a feeling that it was Sigzil from the description of Nomad.
Right.
The moment he said the word master, and a little bit later he said something about enjoying math.
See, for me, okay, so there were a couple of reasons why I thought it was Sazed, or not Sazed, Zeph. First, it was his reference to being passed around from tyrant to tyrant or whatever.
Yes.
And I realized, yes, the Bridge Four were sold from prince to prince or whatever the station is for Rosharan nobility.
Mm-hmm.
But what it originally made me think of was the orb that Zeth was bound to, that he
The
had to
stone.
obey whoever. And then again, it was the kind of reference to being a skybreaker, which, huge spoiler, but until this book, we don't know that Sigil was anything other than a windrunner.
Right.
So that was why I thought it was Zeth, was because it was the skybreaker thing that was confusing me more than anything.
Sure.
Because, as I said, we have never seen Sigil as anything other than a windrunner. So
Right. With the description of Nomad, I had just completely cut out Zeth.
that's fair. And I honestly did not track that
Sure.
easily in my brain. So
Yeah.
although I do find it interesting, the voice that the narrator was really good, by the way.
Yes.
I enjoyed that narrator a lot, but it was also very weird to have a vaguely African/Asian thing applied to a Spren.
Yeah, it was a little Caribbean.
Yeah, a little.
was-
And so,
And honestly, I didn't when reading so I started out
oh, sorry.
You're fine. I started out reading it and it said that Ox had a monotone voice. And
Yeah, I will say the narrator didn't really peg that
Yeah.
well. I think he did it. It was more monotone than a normal person would be,
Yes.
but it wasn't the flat monotone that the book indicated it was.
Right.
He still definitely put some inflection on the voice.
Yeah. Which
I mean, it's not that big a deal.
No.
I would definitely
Still-
have read it differently had I been the one reading it, but it's not that big a deal.
yeah. It portrayed the feeling I think Ox was trying to portray.
Yes.
And then this book is Mad Max Cosmere.
Yes. Or in the way that Sanderson also states it, as Old Western Cosmere.
Right. Stranger shows up, helps out a town in need, goes on his way.
Right.
The cool thing, though, is that we got to find out who Zellion is,
Yes.
and that is not what I was expecting.
No, nor me.
And it's really cool that Zellion's a good guy and super freaking awesome just how all of that happened. The story itself, it was a little heavy the pacing was really heavy in a way I don't really know how to describe.
It was very fast paced. It never really let up.
Right.
There were very very few points where it let up.
Yeah.
And I will agree with you there. And I think there were points where the pacing seemed really fast paced where it didn't need to be.
Yes. I could guarantee you that if I had to read 3 Sanderson books like that in a row, I would be upset
Yes.
because I tried to do the same thing with the Red Rising series where the author gives almost no downtime
Ah, okay.
for 3 books. And I did not finish the 3rd book because it was
Exhausting.
It was exhausting. It was
Yeah.
increasing stakes all the time. They finally got to catch their breath. No, there was a bomb.
Ah,
And all right, it appeals to a lot of people. Maybe had I read them when they came out and there was some time between, that would have been different. But I binged them because I had the Audible credits or something or other.
see, and that was something that I liked about the Magnus Archives, interestingly enough. It was the perfect series of raising the stakes without jumping the shark
Yep.
that I have pretty much ever encountered.
Dresden Files is really, really good at that.
Yeah, no, it does. I don't feel like there are fluctuating stakes in the Dresden
sure.
Files where the Magnus Archives is just continually increasing
Right.
each season, which I don't think you could do that if there was not a defined endpoint for the
Yes,
series.
that's true.
And they definitely had a defined endpoint for the series.
Right.
But it was a perfect job of giving us the info we need to see the raising of the stakes each season without jumping the shark.
Yeah. So bringing it back to the Sunlit Man.
Yes.
It always felt frenetic except 3 chapters or so. Like,
yeah, I agree.
Which is probably what Sanderson was wanting to do, and it worked.
Probably, yeah, no, it did work. I will say that, again, I feel like there were some aspects where it was written frenetically and it didn't need to be.
Sure.
I feel that the storm scene was written weirdly frenetically for where it ended up.
Yeah, I actually don't think I followed that scene very well. And I may have been doing something at the time and just listening to it.
Right.
I just kind of went along with it. And I'll probably be pleasantly surprised when I listen to it or read it again in the future. For the most part, though, the book captured and held my attention.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I think it gave quite a lot of... Sanderson knows that there have been studies that when people know the end of media, of a piece of media, more people than not enjoy that media more.
Interesting.
Right. And Sanderson knows this. He's talked about it on his Intentionally Blank podcast with Dan Wells.
Okay.
He has given us endings
Yes.
to things that we do not know when they are going to happen.
I agree.
And for that, I think we are going to be happier.
Yes. Okay, so here's the interesting thing about this book. I know where I placed it on my reading list.
Okay.
Which is I placed it after the end of after Lost Metal,
Okay.
but before any of the other Secret Projects or Sixth of Dusk.
Yes.
I honestly feel like it could potentially be placed even earlier. It depends on where the name Zellion starts to arise, because we have the figure coming out, which makes me think that maybe we might see that name in Stormlight Series 2.
I am not going to flat out disagree with you. I do believe it's further along than Stormlight Series 2. And the reason being that the Scadrians had essentially a ship that had landed on Canticle and buried itself.
That's true.
And if we take the end of Lost Metal as being 5 years max from the end of Stormlight Series 1,
Right.
then there's 10 to 15 years between the end of the Lost Metal and the beginning of Stormlight Series 2, and then that series won't have a big jump between it. So after Series 2, and I had thought Zellion being part of the miniature series was going to be in Stormlight 5, which is...
It might be more Mistborn Series 3.
Could be Mistborn Series 3. Maybe.
Or Mistborn Series 4, which is going to be the...
Definitely going to be. I could totally see our powers combined.
Yes.
Right?
Well, and on top of that, we already know that apparently holding a Dawn Shard gives you a certain immortality.
So in this case, he explained it a bit.
Right, yes.
Where he is not immortal, but he is going to have a much longer life.
Right, and if you actually hold a Dawn Shard, then that... longer, then that would make you immortal. Like, Hoyd is effectively immortal at this point.
Right.
Because he held a Dawn Shard for so long. But he's also much more affected by the restrictions and nature of the Dawn Shard than Sigil is. So...
Right.
Do we think that they held the same Dawn Shard?
You know, I'm going to have to go with yes on this one.
Okay.
And I don't think it was the one that Risen holds.
No, not at all. Risen was change. I believe that Hoyd and Sigzil both held life.
Could be.
Which is why they're not allowed to take a life. It is the direct opposite of death, and so it has very strict measures on what it thinks you should be allowed to do by its nature.
Sure. I am going to proceed under the assumption that holding any Dawn Shard makes you unable to kill anything as a blanket. I'm just saying, we don't have evidence.
Here's the thing. We've only seen 2 Dawn Shards so far.
And not
No. We haven't even seen... We've seen 1 Dawn Shard. We've seen 3 Dawn Shard holders.
Right.
So we've seen Risen, we've seen Hoyd, and we've seen Sigzil. Now, do we ever see Risen? I don't think she ever tries to take anybody's life or fight anyone.
Right.
Because she's in the chair.
Right.
And that kind of limits her.
She also gets it at the end of the story.
Yeah, that's true. So there's not a whole lot of chance to do anything with it.
So we haven't seen proof to the contrary of my
No, and I'll agree. However, I don't Sigzil seems to indicate that it's the nature of the Dawn Shard that prevents him from fighting.
Yes.
Not just the fact that it's a Dawn Shard.
I don't see enough of a difference between those that was emphasized.
Well, if there's 4 Dawn Shards,
right?
Here's what I would assume are the 4 Dawn Shards that are in existence.
Okay.
Which is, we have life.
Yeah.
We have death, potentially. I'm not going to say that Sanderson would use that word.
Okay.
But we have Alpha and Omega, effectively. We have the beginning and the end. We have change, and then we have stasis. We have constance. We have something
inertia.
that indicates the lack of change. And so what we have are these 4 opposing forces that were used to create the universe. We have the beginning, we have the change, we have something that is restricting change so that it's not just unbridled chaos.
Calling it inertia.
Inertia would work, yeah. And then we have the end.
Right.
And so I feel like if it's the end, it probably wouldn't have any issue with fighting. I'm thinking that even change wouldn't have an issue with fighting. Inertia might, just because it wants things to stay the same.
Sure.
And life obviously would, because it doesn't want you to take a life.
Right.
So now that's my theory. And I'm not going to say I can't be proven wrong.
Right.
I absolutely could. We could, hit a point where they very explicitly say, oh, yeah, anybody that's hold a Dawn Shard of any kind can't take a life. Maybe.
Yeah.
As I said, Sigzil seems to imply, without explicitly stating, that it's the nature of the Dawn Shard that prevents him from fighting, which is why I don't necessarily think it's just the fact that he held a Dawn Shard.
Yeah, and I see what you're saying. I would take that to, because he's only ever held one, that it could still extrapolate to the others.
That's fair. And I wonder if Hoydzol ever held more than one. I wonder if you ever could hold more than one. Maybe consecutively, probably not at the same time.
I don't think the sleepers would let you.
Oh, maybe not.
Sleepless.
No. Yeah.
Sleepers.
I mean, could they prevent you?
Good question.
Like, I mean, Hoyt has apparently gone around and collected every investiture so far. I mean, we see at Tress he finally gets the last one.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And so in the Sunlit Man, once again, Sanderson has said that there's something underneath the crust or the mantle of the planet that's causing the thing to happen.
Yes.
On Tress, it was the seethe. On Canticle, it's the sunlight to come through really harshly and invested and more powerfully invested than what would be normal. and then doesn't explain it. Sanderson doesn't explain what's at the core.
Well, no, but we do sort of get an idea.
What?
Well, it's just the planet itself is invested. Like, this is investiture of the planet. Like,
I know, but he doesn't explain it.
Well, it's the core is the core.
I understand that.
Like, that's where the investiture is.
I understand that.
Okay.
But Sanderson could also just say, there's a God, and we would accept that there's a God
Right.
in the story, right?
Yes.
Or he could say that this one is a shard called preservation, and it can do this, 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 and this.
Right. But, okay, so this goes back to my whole theory that I've brought up, which is the fact that there is planet investiture and then there is shard investiture.
Right.
And they exist independently of each other.
Sure.
The planet can be invested without having a shard there to affect the investiture.
Okay.
And so this is that situation
Right.
where this is just the investiture of the planet. Now, if a shard came by and started connecting itself to the planet,
Right.
that would shape the investiture in some way.
Right.
And, sorry, that's...
Sigzel explains that investiture is like matter and energy.
Right.
What I am saying is that even if it's just an invested planet doing its own thing, there's an explanation that and maybe he'll answer this in a spoiler stream. For Tress, the moons, no 12 moons can stay in orbit, geosynchronous orbit around
Right.
a planet
Yes.
without magic.
Right.
Sanderson has stated this.
Yes.
I accept that.
I accept it too, especially if it's a planet the size of Tress.
Right.
Or Tress's planet. I don't remember.
I
if they gave
am equally prepared to accept that this is a planet and this is just what it does.
Right.
In the book, though, it felt to me, and I may be wrong for feeling this, it felt to me like there was going to be an answer.
Okay, here's what I think is the answer that maybe you were searching for that was implied but never explicitly stated.
Okay.
The fact that the core draws in this investiture in the form of heat
Right.
and in the form of light is what makes the planet reshape itself every morning.
That doesn't help me, but go on.
Well, the fact that, he talks about the magma and
Right.
the fact that the sunlight should not create magma. Like there's no
Right.
reason for it to do so. That's the core drawing in the energy and then releasing it. I think
Right.
the core is not conscious. I think the core just draws in energy and then releases it because, again, like you stated, investiture is a constant. It's neither created nor destroyed. It just changes forms and is transferred.
Right.
So I believe what happens is that the core draws in the sunlight like a current.
Yeah.
And then releases that heat, which shapes the crust of the planet.
Right.
With the magma, and even reshape like the magma and the heat is so intense that it reshapes the planet basically every morning.
Right. I get that it's cool. And I get that's the how and the what is going on.
Right.
But I want the why.
I don't think there is one apart from this planet's investiture.
And that's fine. I want those words from Sanderson.
Okay,
because
fair.
I felt there should have been a why and there wasn't.
Why the birds?
Why the birds in where?
Sixth
Right.
of dusk.
The AVR?
Yeah.
Why the birds? Because they eat the worms.
Right, but why the worms? Why the fruit?
Right.
It just is. Like at some point you hit it where it's like, why metal on Scadrial? Why? I mean, the door is a little bit more explanation because of
the fact that it's bodies.
cells. Cell is its own
Right.
thing.
No. So I don't have a problem with it just being because.
Right.
I felt like there should have been a much narrower because. As in, for me, the planet is it's more of a mystery, and it could be a much smaller mystery.
Well, okay, here's what I could also say is that part of it may be the fact that Sanderson plans to use this planet and its people at some point in the future of the series.
Yeah.
Because if they are future Threnodites, and we do kind of get that because of the nature of things around it, plus they themselves say, oh yeah, we came here from Threnody.
Right.
Like our shades remember, we don't, but you know, we have this kind of living history book here.
Yeah.
Like I could see potentially the Threnodites or the Canticletions?
Canticlites?
Canticlites, maybe. Canticlesians?
Canticlix, because we have the Icelandic people.
Canticles.
Canticles? No, that's just canticles with an S.
No, that's canticles. Canticles with an S is canticles.
Yeah.
Canticles could be the people.
Oh, with an SE at the end.
Yes.
Okay.
Canticles, as in like Chinese or Japanese.
No, I got that as soon as, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Canticles. That's
don't know.
better than
I don't
anything
know.
else for me.
Canticlins would go along with the Puritan, whereas something like Canticles should be something from like Yumi and the Nightmare Painter because it's Asian inspired. But now I'm just nitpicking.
Yeah, like Threnodite doesn't sit with anything.
Well, hold on. There's a really faint bell ringing. I don't know. I guess it goes along with like rite, R-I-T-E in my head. That goes along with like Orthodox churches, rites and passages. Threnodite. Threnodite. What Zionite? Is that a thing? Zionite?
I mean, Zion, yes, the people of Zion, but I don't think Zionite is a word.
I think it might be.
I could be wrong.
I feel like there's a religious thing that ends with "ite" that kind of makes it. Zionite, a member of any various Protestant Christian religious sect. That is not a great way to define that, Wikipedia.
Anyway, regardless, we may get a canon description of the people of Canticle.
18th century at Ronsdorf. Okay, Zionites were a religious sect.
Okay.
So
yeah, potentially. As I said.
Canticlin. I think Canticlin would be okay.
What is a canticle?
I think it's a song. The opposite of a
hymn or
canticle.
chant.
Yeah.
Typically with the biblical text forming a regular part of church service.
Yeah.
Oh, another name for the Song of Songs. Interesting.
Another name for the Song of Songs is Bohemian Rhapsody. Since nobody else was going to laugh.
Yeah, I'm trying to...
What are you looking up?
Well, so I was kind of looking up the etymology for it and if it had any kind of adjective form.
Oh, okay.
So it's from the Latin canticulum, which is the diminutive of cantus, which just means song.
Okay.
So I could see that potentially being used. But it doesn't look like there's any kind of adjective form.
Well, that's fine.
So
what were we talking about?
the Canticles could potentially be used in the future along with their particular brand of investiture, which may be why we don't have a description yet.
I would like to think that we'll see the Canticlins again.
It's fine. It's fine. We're our own. We're the director of our own series in our own heads.
We'll get the audience at Dragonsteel Con, the audience for our Silverlight recording.
Yes, we will have a poll.
We'll have a poll, a live
is it
poll.
Canticles or Canticlin?
Yeah, and then we'll toss the wild card in there, Canticlite.
Yes, we'll have 3 options, and we'll see what the audience prefers.
Nomad tried to save him, but he can't quite get there in time.
I will say, considering they were the ones that give him the name Zellion,
Yes,
I feel like they are going to appear again.
maybe.
Especially because the night, what was that? What were they called again?
The Night Brigade.
The Night Brigade. Those guys are
Some bad juju.
Yeah, there's some bad juju there. That's like militarized Protestant, like Puritan. Yeah, that's a whole bad mix.
If the Quakers had gone to war.
Basically. I do find it interesting how closely they're tied to Christian religion without actually having anything that looks like Christian mysticism in their investiture. That's not a criticism, by the way. It's just an observation.
Yeah. I think we may see the name Zellion, but it'll be a short story about the first Lodestar leading the Canticlins away from Threnody.
Maybe.
Threnody.
I just feel like with having given Sigil the name Zellion,
Yeah.
I feel like they're going to appear again, especially because the Firehearts, Sunhearts, the Sunhearts, and now that they have a way to recharge them, and apparently the Scadrians figure out a way to supercharge them.
Right.
I feel like they're going to start making leaps and bounds technologically.
Could be.
Also, I find it interesting that, and I don't know if Sanderson plans to do this or not, but it'd be interesting to have a, sort of the situation that created our moon, but not for, okay, so because the core of their planet draws in the heat and the light from the sun.
Right.
And then not uses, but that heat and that light is consequently the result of the ever-changing surface of Canticle. I'd be interesting to see it collide with another planet, absorb that mass into itself, and start to stabilize.
Huh. Yeah, we probably won't see that.
No, probably not.
No,
I know.
But that would be cool.
I do think we're going to start seeing a much safer Canticle, not just because they know how to recharge the Sun Hearts now and don't need to kill people for it.
Sure.
But because with that kind of technology and being able to potentially supercharge them, they're going to be able to stay up higher in the sky and not actually be in danger of getting in the way of the current of the sunlight and the core.
Yeah.
So
could be. Yeah. Adelnasium will remember our plight.
Yes.
What a brilliant name.
Yeah.
Sanderson knocked it out of the park with that one and Jeffrey.
Yeah, and Jeffrey was my favorite. I will say, I liked the Sunheart. That whole thing.
Like the magic.
The magic, the fact that it was used as a power source.
Yeah.
The way that they had created invested rifles that were powered by the Sunhearts. It's actually, so remember when I told you a while back, and I don't know if I ever stated on this podcast, that I was creating a story that was going to take place in a Cosmere neutral game system.
Sure.
I'm not going to say that it hits even most points, but there is a surprisingly large amount of comparison between what I was creating and what Sanderson has presented.
Yes, I actually thought about that when I was reading. I was like, hey, cool. So, yeah, I mean...
Well, I mean, like, I had based mine around sunlight and everything like that. Plus, though I had some additional things.
You
like,
did.
I still feel like I could present my thing and not have people be like, oh, this is a ripoff from Canticle.
Sure.
Like, I still feel like I could present my adventure and still have it work as an individual magic system.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. What else is there to say?
I don't know, not a whole lot, because, like you said, that does reference pretty much every single Cosmere, other related Cosmere series, because we have the BEUs
Right.
for the breath equivalent units for how to measure investiture. We have the Scadrians there. Both the Canticles and the Night Brigade are both Threnodites.
Yep.
And we don't even have a full book of them. We just have short stories.
Yeah.
Sigil himself is Rosharan.
Right.
Like you said, I don't think we have a Sixth of Dusk reference. Nor do we have Tress reference, really.
No.
But no, for the most part, all the major series are touched on.
Yeah. At one point, I think he says that he'd rather be like in the sands of Tetelier or something like that. He mentions Tetelier.
Yeah.
From Warbreaker.
Yeah. So.
And where do you think he ends up at the end? Because a lot of people, including myself, thinks he ends up on Utah.
That's what my idea as well. Because they talk about the sailing ships and the four-armed people and all of that. So yeah, I believe it's Utah as well.
Yeah.
But yes, so chronologically, I place it after Lost Metal, but before Tress.
Which is a wide gap of time that we have.
Yeah,
to fill.
it is. But I also feel like because Sigil himself says that space travel is just kind of becoming popularized. And it seems like in both Tress and Yumi, not for the people of Tress, but we see the Elantrin seems very comfortable with space travel.
Yeah.
And obviously in Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, we have some references to that as well. So that's what had me put the Sunlit Man earlier than both of those.
Sure. Yeah.
Although actually, because of information from that book, I might have to rearrange my placement of Sixth of Dusk.
Okay.
Because in Sunlit Man,
Okay.
he talks about the wider universal conflict going on.
Right.
But in both Tress and Yumi, we have no proof. So this is very, very loose circumstantial. But the way that Hoyd talks about the universe, it makes it seem like there is no major conflict going on. But because of Sixth of Dusk, and especially the sequel non-published Sixth of Dusk story,
Yeah.
it seems like that overarching conflict is still alive and well.
You already know my thoughts on where I think Tress and Yumi are being told.
Yes.
But I think because they're being told by Hoyd, we have no way of knowing where they are.
No.
And especially because they're post space age. And so I've been reading Tress. I read Tress out loud before we fall asleep each night.
Okay.
It is definitely telling the story to somebody from First of the Sun, Sixth of the Dusk's world.
Right.
There are a handful of direct references.
Right.
So And since his Sixth of the Dusk is the only character we know, probably just talking to him.
Possibly.
In my opinion. But
yeah.
Because Sanderson also likes taking what you already have and expanding on it rather than adding something new. So we'll see. Yep. And then, yeah, we have Dragonsteel Con in a month and 10 days.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying.
Slightly.
God. Gotta print so many stickers.
We might want to look at some sort of mass printing.
You're looking at them. We have machines.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I was thinking something like Office Max or something where something you can do really prints things on a mass scale.
Oh yeah, but you got to do it onto like sticker paper, and
That's
so that
fair.
would be like,
yeah, that's fair.
Which I imagine you could take to them, but also the way that the Cricut works, it's a lot. Anyways, and that's the review of Sunlit Man.
I think so. Yeah.
The Sunlit Man. Zellion.
I did like as I said, I did like the Sun Hearts and the rifles and all
Yeah.
of that, and then the introduction of the big guns that
That was cool.
Zellion designs for the. Yeah, I'll be interested to see if the planet comes back and if so, in what form.
Yeah,
Because
it'll probably be mentioned at least.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think that's it.
I think so.
So until next time, don't panic, world hoppers.
Life before death, strength before weakness. And Nomad says that the destination is still important.
It's true.
That just makes me feel melancholy. I mean, journey before destination.
The music you hear is Part 3, The Spirit, from Zavadilla's The Music of Elantris, produced by B-Roll Records. Available now on Apple Music, Spotify, and most music providers.
If you like what you hear and you want others to hear it as well, please leave a rate and review. It really helps us get more listeners.